This episode was made possible by our patrons: Kim Hokinson, Marie Elaine Kelly, Bree Ames Smith, Robin Brown, Heather Jewston, Amanda Gilmore, Jill Harrigan, Maria Sanchez, Heather McKinnon, Valerie Jacobson, Jamie Lang, Michaela Frew, Jan Elise Cannon, Sarah Mikado, Monique Harris-Pixado, Natalia Karuska, and Caitlin McTaggart. Thank you so much for being our sponsors. We couldn't do it without you. You can become a sponsor for as little as $1 a month to help us make more episodes and to get these episodes ad-free. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Katie.
This year, America is celebrating its 250th birthday with programs and projects of every possible kind. And these celebrations are, of course, as diverse as America itself. And the world has been catching on to this diversity thanks to the World Cup that we're hosting right now.
Yeah.
Like, I will never tire of the videos of first-time visitors declaring every state is like a different country.
Yeah.
I'll never get tired of it.
The food in Kansas is different than the food in California.
I love it. And, of course, America's birthday is not without its tension and angst and complexity. And that really is the story of America. Multi-dimensional. So, to mark America 250, we get to dive into an untold story of American history. And we get to unveil a new monument.
Oh.
And we get to ponder, how do we tell our story? How does any nation tell its story? What gets remembered and what gets ignored? This is, of course, one of the most fascinating questions of all time. And we're going to do it all in the romantic, moody, Spanish moss-laden live oak southern city of Savannah, Georgia. And we're going to talk about a group of 7 women who are literally the reason that Savannah is the famously gorgeous, historic city that it is today. And the city just put up a brand new monument to them. And these ladies are known as the Savannah 7.
Just a little song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind.
They were there to save Savannah from the wrecking ball after World War II, when across America, it was the atomic age and everything was future-oriented. They didn't want to talk about history, and they certainly didn't want to preserve it.
Yeah.
Everything old was boring and yucky, and the wrecking ball was coming for cities across America. And it wasn't just a fad, actually. The federal government had a major role in it. The Federal Housing Act of 1949 gave American cities lots of money and the powers of eminent domain for what they called urban renewal, also known as the bulldozer approach. This is the reason why certain cities are not today known for being historic. For example, Cincinnati, New York, New Haven, Detroit, St. Louis. These are the cities that bulldozed everything. And that same wrecking ball came for Savannah in 1954. They tore down the city market, the beautiful historic market in Savannah since 1733, and turned it, of course, into a parking garage.
Sure. Another symbol of America.
Yeah, part of the story. And the city of Savannah dusts off its hands. They're like, wow, beautiful, great, let's do more. But a group of 7 ladies stared at the lifeless parking garage and set out to do something. The city is not behind this. The city is deeply annoyed by this, and that's important. Behind closed doors, they called these ladies of the Historical Society. They called them the Hysterical Society. What they ended up doing was beyond their wildest dreams. It was to effectively save the city of Savannah from the wrecking ball, creating the largest historic district in the United States.
And saving the future Savannah economy for the next 100 years.
How did 7 ladies achieve this feat? This is what I want to unpack, because let's say you have a goal. Let's say you want to do something big. How do you make that dream a reality? You need a team. And here in Savannah, we have a highly successful model, a recipe, if you will, of the precise skill sets of ladies required. So maybe by following this exact recipe, all of us can make our wildest dreams come true too.
Fingers crossed.
So let's get going to Savannah, Georgia. I'm Katie Nelson.
And I'm Olivia Mickle.
And this is What's Her Name?
Fascinating women you've never heard of.
We lucky folk on the What's Her Name weekend Savannah last September sat down in the garden of a grand southern mansion with our gracious host, Danielle Hodes.
I'm Danielle Hodes, and I'm the executive director of the Davenport House Museum.
The story of the Davenport House begins in 1820, but let's roll time forward to the 1940s, post-World War II, when this old, proud mansion has long been converted into tenement apartments, and it's decaying, and it's a hodgepodge. It's an icon of urban decay.
So we're in a post-World War II Savannah. Modernism is all the rage. We are into tearing things down and building new. And the old city market, which was a beautiful building out on the west side in the historic district, was torn down, and they put a parking lot there. And up next on the chopping block comes the Davenport House, and it was scheduled for demolition. The building that's just catty corner to the museum now was at that time a funeral home, and they were purchasing the Davenport House to raise it and put in a parking lot for their hearses. And so the 7 ladies get wind of this, in particular Anna Hunter. And Anna Hunter was the leader of this coalition of women. She was a journalist, and she was also very much just a woman about town. She knew everything that was going on around Savannah. And so she went to Lucy McIntyre, who was another, what would be another one of the 7 ladies. And she said, Lucy, they want to tear down the Davenport House. And so she said, okay, well, we gotta do something about this.
We've got to do something about this. Words uttered by so many across time and across the globe. How did they do something about this? Let's assemble the team.
Preservationists, assemble!
Perfect.
And I will say also just that, all of these women were technically transplants into Savannah. They were not all born in Savannah.
And in Savannah, whether you're from there or not was kind of a big deal back then.
And now.
Kind of, yeah, today.
But they saw what a beautiful, important place is. And perhaps not growing up there and coming to it, they had a particular appreciation for it. And it was that specialness that brought them in, and they didn't want to lose that. And so I think that probably played a big role in these specific people coming together and coming to this call to action.
From this fact, I would like to extrapolate that you can claim the place you live. You don't need permission. You don't need to be born there. You don't need to wait to be included. You can dive in and claim that place as your place.
Yeah.
Okay, now, let's assemble this team. Recipe for a successful do something about this. Number 1, a journalist with her ear to the ground. Anna Colquitt Hunter.
Anna Colquitt Hunter. And Anna kind of becomes really the de facto leader of the Seven Ladies. She is the galvanizing force behind all of them.
She went to a Presbyterian ladies' college until she married, but she was widowed, age 44, with 3 children, and she started working for the Savannah Morning News.
Anna had a 40-year career at the Savannah Morning News. She was very keyed into what was going on in Savannah. So she is the one that comes to Lucy McIntyre when she hears that the Davenport House is going to be demolished, and she says, we got to do something. And in her tradition of service, she worked with the Red Cross. She was posted in DC, in North Africa, and Italy, so she was really all over the place, and later awarded a Bronze Star for her work.
Anna has such personality. I love this lady.
Yeah.
During World War II, she jumped in with both feet as field director of Red Cross stations in North Africa and in Italy. There's a photo of her in uniform looking just every bit the highly competent wartime woman. To get a flavor of her personality, Daniel got this letter that she sent to her sister during the war. I want to read this excerpt because it brings Anna Hunter to life. I had a very exciting time this morning and think the censor will pass this, as it is no longer a secret that we have a bazooka. They had a demonstration, and I shot the bazooka. All the depot was there, and as it has not been shot by many of the men, it was exciting, especially as it sometimes bucks. However, I am a disgrace and could crawl off and die, as I missed. So did 2 of the fellows, but that didn't compensate. It would have been so wonderful to have blasted the tank. I was especially disappointed as some of the officers with whom I went out for flowers and to target shoot the other day bragged about my shooting.
Aww.
I shot kneeling, though, and they made me wear gloves to keep from burning my hand. You can imagine my disgust when I didn't make a direct hit. That's Anna Colquitt Hunter.
Oh, that's not the vision that we tend to have of the genteel ladies shooting bazookas.
Shooting bazookas. Then, after the war, she became a dancer and a singer, performing across the South and as far north as New York City.
She was also a painter. We at the museum, we have a couple of her paintings, which we feel really fortunate to have. And she was also responsible for somewhat revitalizing the riverfront area. The riverfront was not someplace that people wanted to go, but she maintained her studio there. And so she saw just how wonderful a place that it could be. And so that was a place that was very special for her.
And then she hears the Davenport House is next on the chopping block, and she goes, not on my watch. She goes to Miss Lucy, and I think of Miss Lucy as the Dowager Duchess of Savannah. Mm-hmm. The fine old lady, she was older than all the rest, known by everyone, a Maggie Smith type character, if you will. And the Davenport House is of special relevance to her because the Davenports, the home's original inhabitants, were her ancestors. So, item number 2 in our recipe for successful do something about this, a Dowager Duchess type.
Lucy Barrow McIntyre was born in 1886 in Athens, Georgia, and I think somewhat to her dismay because her whole family was from Savannah, and she very much still saw herself as a native Savannian, kind of in every way. And she was the great-granddaughter of Isaiah Davenport, and she was involved in so many social welfare projects and progressive movements in general. She was the oldest of the 7 ladies, so she gets her start early with the Savannah Suffrage Association. She's very involved in the cause of suffrage.
For fans of the musical Suffs, she was one of those old guard suffragists who supported Woodrow Wilson's presidency.
She's appointed as a Georgia committee woman on the Democratic National Committee. She was a very staunch supporter of Woodrow Wilson. She co-founded the Junior League here in Savannah and served as its first president. She was a founder of the Savannah Nursery School, the Women's Relief Committee, Country Day School, which is definitely still operational in Savannah, the Chatham County Nursing Home, and she was on just an infinite number of boards.
And in her 70s, decades later, she spoke out in favor of civil rights for African Americans with the same enthusiasm that she had fought for suffrage half a century earlier.
So I think it was very strategic that Anna goes to Lucy and she says, we need to do something. Because Lucy was never necessarily at the forefront of all these things, but she was always, I think there's a quote where they're saying she was the wisest voice in the room. And she was so involved and understood how to organize this rich, rich history, her personal history of organization, that Anna knew that she was the person that she first needed to go to get this off the ground. She was known as Miss Lucy, so you could kind of go up to anyone and say, oh, Miss Lucy, and they would know who you were talking about. Just a truly beautiful human, as all of them were.
She was also a poet. Here's a bit from her award-winning poem, 3 Islands, which I just love. Savannah wears about her wrist a bracelet of seas, with little jeweled islands set at intervals in these. One is alive and colorful, with laughter in her name, and one a wistful monotone for tragedy to claim. The third is carved in mystery, a jewel hot and strange, whose many-sided facets flash an iridescent change. Isn't that good?
Cool.
Now that I think about it, I mean, that's Savannah. She's wrapped the complexity of Savannah's history and change and modern change all into one story. But that really is the story of America also. Amazing. Okay, we've got 2. We need more.
Eleanor Grunsfield Adler Dillard. She's this long, wonderful name. She is born in 1903 in New York, and so she moves to Savannah in 1925 with her husband, and she has her brother who's an architect, and he supposedly recommends her buying the Davenport house for $2,000 at the time, and she says, heck no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to restore that. Like, that is a huge project that I don't want to take on. So ultimately she changes her mind, but at least in this personal capacity in the 20s, she says, no, thank you. And she is also one of the 2 women that are Jewish. And when she comes down, she becomes involved heavily with Mikveh Israel Synagogue, and kind of this tradition in Judaism is a tradition of service, and that you need to leave the world better than how you found it, and that you are responsible for that. And so this really kind of ethos comes across in her service and all of the organizations that she was involved in. She was on the board of the Women League of Voters, the Family Services of Savannah. She supported the symphony and the theater. There's this great story of, in her support for the theater, she had written a short play that was going to be performed up in New York. And there was the theater troupe was coming up, and she invites a young teenage Johnny Mercer to join them on their trip up here, and he falls in love with New York City.
This is, of course, the Johnny Mercer, beloved native son of Savannah, songwriter extraordinaire with so many classics of the 40s and 50s.
Just picture every song you know. And it was probably him.
Johnny Mercer wrote it.
And he asks if he can stay, and he, has to come back down. But then, as soon as he can, he's back up in New York City. And I feel like this is very emblematic of how Savannah works, where the connections between everyone and everything are so strong. So, her working to inspire the next generation of creative Savannians is really fantastic. She was a niece of Julius Rosenwald, who was involved in the Sears Roebuck Company and kind of the formation and really making Sears Roebuck successful. And He goes on to create Rosenwald schools, specifically dedicated to educating African Americans and the descendants of enslaved people. So this kind of tradition of service that lives in her own family is something that she was able to bring to the larger efforts of the Historic Savannah Foundation.
So Eleanor is a philanthropist with a social network that extends far beyond Savannah itself, way bigger than the project at hand. And she's got the designer's mind when it comes time to turn the house into a museum.
She does also work, once the Davenport House is restored, to oversee the decorations.
Also, fun fact, her son was Lee Adler, who would be president of the Historic Savannah Foundation for a long, long time. He's a well-known eccentric who would later be embroiled in a murder mystery, which is the central plot of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Such a character. Okay, next. We need someone who will do the brave, brash thing. Dorothy Ripley Roebling.
Dorothy Ripley Roebling was the youngest of the women. She was born in New Jersey in 1904, and she marries Robert C. Roebling in 1925. And this is the Roeblings of the Brooklyn Bridge Roeblings, and the engineering the Brooklyn Bridge. So it's kind of her husband's family and where she's coming from. And you know, they were getting a little bit iffy at a certain point about living in New York, and around 1932, they purchase an enormous yacht, and they start kind of sailing all over the place.
They literally circumnavigated the globe on their yacht, looking for home, a new place to call home,
And at one point, they end up landing at the Modena Plantation, which is on Skidaway Island, which is just kind of south of Savannah proper. And they fell in love with the property, and they end up moving there. And there was no road, so they would have to go on their boat to get supplies, and they end up kind of having farm animals and running the farm. And Dorothy is educating her children out there and living a very different life to, I imagine, than that they were living in New York City. So kind of how she gets more involved in service herself is she was an avid gardener. And so she actually helped with the restoration of the Davenport House garden. She was a member of the Trustees Garden Club, as well as in the arts. So she was a member of the Junior League of Savannah and the Art Association as well. So she kind of brings this very interesting kind of worldly perspective to the seven ladies and this love of gardening and the arts.
A brash, daring gardener after my own heart.
All of these names, I just have to say, but apparently another ingredient is they all have to have fabulous names.
Fabulous multi-barrel and good nicknames to go with it.
Yeah.
Dorothy Ripley Roebling, she went by Dickie. Dickie Roebling.
So our next lady is Nola McAvoy Roos. She has a bit of a self-made story, and she's the business lady. She is going into business. She is elected in 1912 and 1916 secretary treasurer of the Roos Hide and Fur Company, so her husband's company. And then a little bit later in the 20s, she becomes a member of the Savannah Business and Professional Women's Club. She's elected as the president of the State Federation of Business and Professional Women's Clubs. So she starts to get really involved in business, and specifically becoming a leader in women's business and women's roles in business, and kind of champions that. She ends up becoming the first president of the Women's Council on the Savannah Chamber of Commerce. She's executive secretary to the mayor of Savannah.
Executive secretary, which of course reminds me of our episode, Catherine Gibbs.
Yeah.
She is also kind of politically active as well, and she organized and became the president of the Chatham County Democratic Women's Club. So she's really involved this way. She's the fundraising chair again for the American Red Cross down here. And so she ends up bringing this more business mindset and maybe somewhat of a more reality mindset. Finance is business, understanding what's it going to take to run this organization from that kind of a perspective.
Finance-minded, detail-oriented, put together, savvy. Okay, we've got 5. What skills are we missing? Do you know what we need? We need somebody who doesn't know what her skills are, but she just keeps showing up.
Jane Adair Wright. So she's born in 1901 in New Albany, Indiana. Shout out, I am also from Indiana, so I feel the love here. Jane moves from Indiana to Savannah when her father became the rector of Christ Episcopal Church, so a church here in Savannah. She attends a business school in Savannah. She kind of jokes about it, and she's like, I wasn't really particularly successful at that. That she kind of maybe doesn't know exactly so much what she wants to do as some of the other ladies that were very driven. But she does end up becoming a charter member of the Junior League, and she serves as the chairwoman of its first placement committee.
I like her story because she is flailing for a long time. She tries executive stuff. She tries business. I'm not good at... She's finding out what she's not good at. I'm not good at that. This is not for me. But she's there. She's showing up. She's staying involved.
She becomes the executive director of the Tuberculosis Association, was a secretary at Christ Episcopal Church for a number of years, joins the Georgia Historical Society, the Trustees Garden Club. So she's still very much, involved in Savannah life. But it is Jane that does go on to become the first curator of the Owens-Thomas House.
The Owens-Thomas House is a historic house museum in Savannah, the first in all kinds of ways.
And really helping them to shape, the interpretation and what they would talk about in that house and the design, the interior design of that as well. So that interest in the Owens-Thomas House and that interest in curation, she does then lend that to the Davenport House. And the Davenport House starts to get off the ground and they do make the decision to open it as a museum. That's where Jane comes in and she really gets to shine.
Last but not least, we need a charismatic doer who will not quit, no matter how big the challenge.
Catherine Judkins Clark, but she was known as Kaz, so she's Kaz to her friends and neighbors.
She grew up in Lucerne, Switzerland, and she spoke French. She also lived in New York and Virginia. When she went to college, she was the captain of the basketball team. She was named the May Queen.
As she was a nurse's aide in both world wars, actually.
During the Great Depression, she traveled to sell tomato juice to restaurants and clubs. During World War II, back with the Red Cross, this lady is doing whatever needs to be done. And she is known for never backing down from a challenge, no matter how big it is. Okay, our team is assembled. Can they save the house?
Yes! Oh, wait.
How did you know? Again, there are no programs, there's no grants, there's no historic preservation movement in America to draw on. So the only possible way to save the house is if they buy it themselves. They need to raise the money to purchase this tenement building and then raise the money to revitalize it. For what purpose? That's what everybody's saying. What are you going to do with it? This is a money pit. But they commit to take on the money pit themselves.
They end up raising $22,500 to purchase the Davenport House and save it from destruction. And in the newspaper, there's this funny little cartoon of a wrecking ball in front of the Davenport House. And you have the women and they're kind of running him off. And the operator says, "Okay, ladies, you win." But the house that they inherited was a mess. It had been, so this is 1955, it had been a tenement since the 1870s. It was not in good shape at all. And so they had a really big job ahead of them just with the restoration of that building. Those women understood what it meant to restore a building, to furnish it, to create a working museum, that was a really tall order, and it required a lot of money. There's a memo that I came across just in the documentation that basically says that, is if we're gonna do this, it's a lot of work and it's a big commitment. So they weren't going into it willy-nilly by any means. And there were offers that they were entertaining potentially to sell the Davenport House to, in a similar way that they would revolve a property now, to have it go to someone else. But they ultimately did make the decision that they wanted it to be a historic house museum, which I'm so glad they did.
I'm so glad they did too. Yay! You can visit the House Museum today, and really it tells the story of America. I mean, they're from the colonial squares of Savannah to the American Revolution on its walls. They tell the story of urban slavery in the basement. The Civil War is an incredible story because it was a house divided. 3 of the Davenport sons fought for the North, 3 for the South. And then the house becomes a tenement building, so you have all these immigrant stories and the stories of the working poor. And then you've got the post-World War II wrecking ball story and the launch of the historic preservation movement. I mean, it tells a story of America.
Amazing.
And it is aesthetically incredible.
It's like a perfect time capsule.
Let's go on a mini tour with just a couple of little samples.
All right, so let's actually go ahead and we're gonna start moving into the Davenport House and then kind of going a bit further back in history than the 50s. So the Davenports, Sarah and Isaiah, lived here. They ultimately had 7 children who lived into adulthood, several of whom were born in this house. There were also, in addition to the Davenport family, 13 enslaved workers who also resided in the house here. So in November of 23, we reopened our basement level with an exhibition that specifically focuses on urban enslavement and that shares the story of the 13 enslaved workers. So that's actually where we're gonna enter right now. So it's a bit dark in there, so give your eyes a moment to adjust. Oh, please. One other thing I want to point out in this space is this doll over here. So this was found in the rafters of the Davenport House, and it's a little hard to tell, but that animal we think might be like a little rabbit or a mouse. This could be a depiction of Brer Rabbit and Tar Baby from the Brer Rabbit stories. It's clearly hand stitched, so it could have been the doll of an enslaved person.
Oh, hello.
Okay, so let's go upstairs. And one neat thing about the stairs, so when you go up, the only creaking you're gonna hear is probably my knees, because this is an iron frame staircase that is self-supporting. It is not reliant on the outside walls for support. So it is incredibly solid for being over 200 years old. You can see the evidence of this blue paint here. So this is what's referred to as paint blue, a very specific color that in the Gullah Geechee tradition, it was thought that spirits couldn't cross over water. And so you have this blue color as kind of a protection from evil spirits. But you can also see these scraps of wallpaper that remain from the tenement time period. And wallpaper was a way that you could create your own space when you were living in a temporary residence. So we do have kind of multiple different kinds of wallpaper that are put up just as part of that effort as well.
That's it? It's all hardwood.
Perfect. This is the most public-facing area in space of the Davenport House. Some notable feature here is you can see that kind of neoclassical architecture really on display. You have the Ionic columns, you have the acanthus leaves that are here. There is a stunning amount of original plaster. Most of the plaster is still original. The artisanship in this house is really truly magnificent, from the plasterwork to the woodwork and the wallpaper. So Isaiah operating in this time and this context is also very interesting because we are in a post-revolutionary America where we're very excited to think back to Greece and the beginning of democracy. Again, the neoclassical, we're celebrating being a part of that kind of larger historical heritage. We hate everything British. There are no British things. French things, though. Very much a fan of French things that are going on. But so we know specifically that this print, as well as that map, were in the possession of the Davenports. So you have this signing of the Declaration of Independence that Isaiah is incredibly proud to be an American, to be living in this kind of post-revolutionary time where we are very proud of ourselves and what we have achieved. But at the same time, we're settling into being our own nation. And the questions that come with that, the issues that come with that are also, very much a part of kind of their day-to-day lives.
The Savannah Seven were just getting started. They said, can we somehow prevent every single building becoming an emergency like this? Every single time something is up on the chopping block, we have to step in and save it. In other words, how do we save the city?
They've started something. They have created the historic Savannah Foundation. They have set a mission for themselves to preserve the cultural heritage and built environment of Savannah as a city. And that's when they really do get moving then. They undertake a survey of the city. So that's one of the first really big things that they do. They say, okay, you need to understand what you have before you can, really go about saving things. So they do this enormous survey of the city, and that helps them to understand better, where do we need to move first? Where are our opportunities? How do we then go about with our next steps that we want to take? They didn't look at saving individual buildings so much as saving whole environments. So they would at times purchase rows of houses or all the houses around a square and really work to preserve larger sets of the city because they understood that the true gem that is Savannah needed to be preserved as a whole and not just in bits and pieces. Also with the very smart intention of not that we want to necessarily just have everything stay exactly the way that it was, but save the houses to create a future for the living city of Savannah. They didn't want it to just be a mausoleum. They didn't want it to be so stagnant, but understanding the role that preservation could have in the future development of a city and having that be an asset. They very wisely understood that this was something that would bring in tourists. And they consulted with other, preservationists and other people around the country. Like, they were very much on the early side of things, but they weren't the first organization to have a revolving fund that would purchase properties and save them and then sell them to preservation-minded buyers. But they really saw tremendous success with that model and really kind of perfected it.
Does that model still exist today?
It does. So that is the current iteration of the Historic Savannah Foundation does still have a revolving fund where they purchase properties and then sell them to a preservation-minded buyer. Yeah, so we're still saving buildings in the city. I'll say the pricing in the historic part of Savannah is vastly different than it was in 1955. But the Historic Savannah Foundation has branched out to other neighborhoods, to historically Black neighborhoods, to really help preserve those buildings as well, because they are absolutely worth preserving in Savannah.
And today, Savannah has the largest historic district, the most number of buildings as opposed to acreage in the United States. 2,500 buildings.
Cool.
And can you imagine just knowing Savannah as it is today?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if it wasn't that? It would feel tragic.
Yeah. Nobody would know it. Nobody would go there. Nobody would care.
No. Yeah, and even if, like, you could have historians say, what used to be here was 22 squares. You know, you'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
You would not know. The National Historic Preservation Act was not passed until 1966, by which time much of America had been bulldozed. It was women like the Savannah Seven, in the places where they stepped up.
Yeah.
Cities were preserved and history was remembered. And last September, the Savannah Seven were honored with a monument.
So well deserved.
Also, the first of its kind in the United States.
So beautiful.
And we got to be there for it. Listeners, imagine yourself standing with us on the grass in the center of one of Savannah's iconic squares on a breezy September morning. And let's listen to the mayor, Van Johnson, speak.
Good morning. This is absolutely a redeeming moment for me. For the 22 years I've been in elected service, and people reminded me constantly that I'm not from Savannah. I think I'm in good company. So I share something with the 7 ladies. I have the honor of serving as the mayor of the greatest city on earth. I didn't make it that way. I didn't earn it. We inherited it. And we inherited it because of these visionaries that we're here to honor today. Some things we know have been and remain true. Most notably, that girls still rule the world. In order to understand where we are today, it's important to be able to go back. Go back before I was born, to understand where Savannah was and where Savannah could be if a different route was taken. In the early 1950s, Savannah was at a crossroads. We were on the precipice of economic decline. Business interests were taking over, and historic structures were being demolished to help push the economy. And we had these ordinary women who ended up doing extraordinary things. And because they put their ordinary to a collective extraordinary work, they are now and forever legendary. It is important for cities like Savannah to continue to move forward. But in Savannah, we move forward by also looking back. And you can do both at the same time. For our city, as we continue to grow, as we're in front of the Davenport House that almost was not here, we know that vision is one thing, work is something else, and financing is something else. According to our records at the time, these amazing ladies raised about $22,500 to save the Davenport House. In today's terms, that's a little over $300,000 from 7 women. They were from different backgrounds, from different places. I suspect they had different political affiliations. They were of different faiths. But it was important for them to keep the main thing, which was their love for this city. We know that for us, this is a temporary address. Eventually, we all move on to our next thing. What will young people 70 years from now come here and they look at this piece of magnificent stone and they read those names that despite the odds, despite the challenges, despite people saying it can't be done because it was never done before, that it still can be done. And so I call these names because I should, and I want to recognize them with a moment of silence because we must. Catherine Judkins Clark, Eleanor Adler Dillard, Anna Colquitt Hunter, Lucy Barrow McIntyre, Dorothy Ripley Roebling, Nola McVoy Roos, and Jane Adair Wright. There's an old African proverb that says, as long as you call their names, they never die. It is my privilege to dedicate this monument in honor of the 7 ladies whose efforts 70 years ago changed the course of the history of this city. May this monument always serve as an inspiration for those who come by it to know that anything is possible if you're willing to work, if you're willing to serve, and if you're willing to look towards the future. God bless.
Thank you so much, Mayor Johnson. Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. Thank you.
How do we tell our story? As people of any city, state, or nation, we have to decide it matters, and we have to look beyond ugly, or what we think is boring, or what we don't want to talk about. Even saving a mansion is saving the stories of all the tenement residents who lived there.
Yeah.
We've really started to expand the story first with our basement exhibition, but the house led such a bigger life. And I think the tenement period specifically is it holds a lot of interest for me because it mirrors the ups and downs of Savannah as a city. And I think for a long time, maybe it was thought as this is just a blighted part of the house's history. I find it to be one of just the most interesting parts of the house's history, knowing the Chan family's information that has come out of that. We had an intern this summer who did a bunch of research on the tenement period, and we know that there was a German family that lived in the historic Kennedy Pharmacy for like 20 years or something like that. We know that the confectionery was downstairs. We know that we had artists that lived in the house, war widows that lived in the house because they could afford to. Men who were working in the shipyards building ships during World War II were living in the house. Second generation Irish immigrants were here. There are just so many stories that speak to that larger history of Savannah. And I think those are stories worth sharing and doing a little gentle probing and questioning of, what makes a Savannian? Who makes a Savannian? How do we determine that? How do we talk about that? How do we talk about our own history during this period?
We have to have the audacity to take action ourselves, not wait for the city or the state or ask for permission or try to get a grant or.
Yeah.
We have to just do the thing. And it's just like the Girl Scouts, founded in Savannah just a couple decades before. Don't ask, just do the thing.
Do it.
Yeah, it's not someone else's responsibility. As a citizen and someone who thinks this is important, you have a voice and you need to raise that voice. We are creating history and you need to be active in that, like the 7 ladies were active. It's not a passive activity. You gotta be engaged in it. I wanna say something tacky like you are the change you wanna see in the world, but I think there's significant truth to that nobody's gonna do something for you. Like if you feel passionately about something and something is important to you, then you need to go out and do something about it.
Assemble your team of 7. So, shall we revisit the recipe? Here's what we need. 1, a community-connected, energetic leader with her ear to the ground. 2, a dowager duchess poet. 3, a philanthropist with a big heart and an even bigger social network. 4, a world-wise, daring, brash doer. 5, a self-made, business-savvy, detail-oriented fundraiser. 6, the lost soul who just keeps showing up. And 7, the doer who will not quit no matter the challenge. That's your team. Find out which one you are and go get the rest. And then have the audacity and the courage to do something about it.
Even when they call you hysterical.
Yes.
Georgia, the whole day through, just a little song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. Georgia.
For me, it comes back to this amazing tradition of service. Not everyone has the same call to service like that, and that they found that within each other. It was very at peace with just who each of them were, that serving your community, that helping people, that making the world a better place was already so ingrained for them. It was this part of their personalities that I do find so inspirational, and that does make me think, just as an individual person, like, what are those things that I feel passionately about? It is important. Like, you might not think it's important, but look at us celebrating them now. And they could not have imagined the legacy that they have, not just in Savannah, nationally, setting an example. Like, you don't think about your decisions necessarily on a level like that, but things grow, and the more that you do, the more that you can potentially leave a legacy like that.
Special thanks to Danielle Hodes and Tiffany Dunnigan at the Davenport House Museum of the Historic Savannah Foundation. And special thanks also to the folks who joined us on the Savannah What's Her Name weekend. And congratulations to the city of Savannah for the first monument to preservationists in the United States. Music for this episode was recorded by the U.S. Marine Band, Hoagie Carmichael, Christian Larson, Amulets, the Paul Whiteman Orchestra, All Good Folks, and Daniel Foster Smith. And as always, check the tours section of our website to find out where we're going next. Come and join us. Thank you so much for donating. Thanks for listening.